Welcome. I'm author and strategist James Baker with Dr. Edward Saltzberg. Thank you for coming to the Hunt, Capture, and Win Orientation webinar. I want to take a moment to introduce myself. I'm the author of How to Win Business from the Government. I'm also a consultant, and I work with companies that sell and market into the federal and state government marketplace. You can learn more about me at jamesjbaker.com. Joining me today is Dr. Edward Saltzberg. Ed?
Thank you, Jimmy. My background is similar to Jimmy's in that we both help firms with their marketing programs, but I focus on the capture and strategic positioning part of business acquisition. So we move from what Jimmy does really professionally into the kinds of programs that I run for companies.
Thanks, Ed. Today's goal are three areas that are critical to any kind of strategy and success in the government marketplace. We're first going to focus in on hunting, and what we mean by hunting is how you research your government target. We're going to teach you strategies how to look at the budget numbers, both the general as well as the IT. We're going to teach you how to read business cases and other public documents and audits that will inform you about the challenges, political mandates impacting, as well as goals of the organization you want to sell and market to. Ed is going to come in and talk to you a little bit about capture and win. And Ed, why don't you share with a little bit, once we do the research on the customer, we then begin looking at the deals we're going to go after.
Right, and what really separates the firms that win consistently in the business from those that are sort of just average performers are about 11 different principles or strategies that bring a systematic process into the capture part of the business. And that's both in terms of going after an individual award and managing the whole pipeline of opportunities so that you can meet your performance goals or your revenue goals. And then the last part of what we're going to cover will be that important transition from positioning to win to getting ready to write a proposal and actually write that winning proposal. And that transition period is so critical because the amount of time you have to write that proposal is only usually about 30 days. So anything that goes wrong in the beginning of that period of time will really affect the quality of the proposal and the win potential.
With any kind of market pursuit in the government, it begins with your research, understanding the mission, the mandates, the challenges that are facing your government customer. You need to have an understanding of the key programs and what they're investing in. You also need to have an understanding of what's going on in their organization, from leadership to different mandates that are making the government literally go out to industry asking for help. These are unbelievably critical pieces to researching your government customer. Today we're going to talk about one of those aspects is how you begin to look at the budget. It all starts with the money. On your screen you'll see a page from the Office of Management Budget. You can literally go out to here and you can click on your target department. I know one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I began selling to government many years ago is that you can't focus on the entire government. Pick one or two agencies and really understand them well and look at what's going on inside the organization. So on the page here, you see a link to get out to whitehouse.gov/OMB. That will take you into where the budgets are. In addition to this, when you're looking at a department, understand that they will have a page on their website that talks about their budget, their mission goals, their strategy plans, and you should also look at those documents. They're vital for any kind of marketing, business development, planning purposes. Keep in mind, too, that there's a big difference between the general budget and what are called the Exhibit 53s, which is the IT budget, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to teach you today a technique called look and find. And although this might sound simple, it's a very hard thing to do because budgets are lots of documents, there's lots of numbers to read, and you really need to understand how to go after that. We're going to take the Department of Justice as an example. This is from the general page of DOJ. And you can see the blue arrow on your screen. We're looking at the change in budget. We're trying to understand where they're going to have increases, where there are decreases, and how that impacts us. The thing to keep in mind when you're looking at a huge department like DOJ is that DOJ is comprised of over 40 different offices and agencies that work under the DOJ name. And you have to understand where their pockets of monies are, what's going on with them. So again, whether it's Department of Justice, Treasury, Agriculture, whatever the organization is, you want to have an idea of the general budget, and then you want to begin to understand what each of the components or the offices, what they're doing, and where they're spending money. There's no substitute for reading all these documents page by page and making an assessment of what impacts your company. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. What I recommend to people that take our training classes, make a short list of what your company does. List the keywords. What is your unique selling proposition? What are the products and services? What are the kinds of problems you can help the government solve? When we do the paid training, we're going to talk in greater detail about some of these strategies. But what you want to do is you want to make a short list, and literally using the control and find feature on your computer, you will look at where the government has those problems. So let's just take an example, for instance. If we're looking at the Department of Justice and I do security, I will pull up all the budget documents, I will do a Control F, and I will look at where security is mentioned everywhere in there. I will make a sheet and I'll say, okay, they're calling for money here for security, here for security, here for security, and at the end of the day, we have an idea of where they're going to be spending their dollars for security, and then we're able to discern from that how it impacts your company and what that means to you. I also want to encourage you, when we do the Hunt, Capture, and Win training, to go over research. It's about a 3-hour training. We're breaking it into 2 sections. It's quite comprehensive, and we can't go over everything today in the webinar, but I wanted to encourage you that if you're willing to join us on the 12th and the 19th, this is what you have to look forward to. We're not only going to be talking about the budget, I'm going to teach you all how to read the budget and make a run rate of qualified deals to pursue in 2014. We're going to take a deep dive into the technology budget, and I'm going to show you the difference between new money and steady state money and how that impacts you. I'm going to show you how to read budget documents, audit documents, business case documents, and understand how they'll impact your company. I'm going to show you how to identify the right person for a program, how you make a cold call, an email, and literally create an unforgettable first impression. We'll delve into a little bit how you make a business case to the government. The last thing we're going to focus on, and this is where I spend a lot of my time as a consultant outside of the research, is true ROI for all your marketing programs. We're going to show you how to leverage traditional marketing with social media to ultimately get the attention of your government buyer. Take a look at your screen right now. We have more details about the upcoming Hunt, Capture, and Win series. And I'd like to hand things over now to Dr. Saltzberg, who will take you through some capture and proposal strategies. Ed?
Right. So the difference between winning or losing in the government marketplace depends in part upon your ability to identify where the government is spending money in your area. But it also depends upon getting your company positioned to win. In other words, how do you beat the competition? And I'm going to talk quickly about 11 principles that if your company doesn't have all 11 in place, you'll have a work plan ahead of you to see what you can do to get your company to actually execute each one of these 11 areas. The 11 principles really are common sense, but not necessarily common knowledge. They're not very difficult to understand, but you'd be surprised at how many firms don't actually do all 11 of them. So let's just jump in here and talk about a couple of things to lead up to them. Do I have control? No, you do. Okay, so as I had mentioned before, the industry leaders are, in my experience, working at the C-level of companies, providing consulting to that level, that there's a real difference between firms that are growing consistently from firms that are growing at a more moderate rate. And the difference is that although the shape of their revenue curve is really the same, they win a contract and then grow it out and win another one and step up, so it's really a step function, is that the real leaders in the industry have short treads and steep risers. In other words, they bid and they win more often. They identify where the money is, what it's being spent on, and then they get themselves very well positioned to win those contracts. And it's that positioning that separates the firms that are winning consistently from the firms that are just average in the field. So let's keep on going here. So in a nutshell, the kinds of techniques that I bring into companies results in a track record like this. And I'm not the only one out there that has an excellent track record of winning. But as you can see, by applying the principles, the clients that I've been working with are winning some extremely large contracts, from solar energy contracts to environmental contracts with the Department of Transportation, to grant management in the energy field, all the way down to base operation contract. And I just want to provide some validation of the importance of being systematic in government contracting if you want to win consistently and bring this kind of a record into your company. So let me just quickly run through these 11 items, and you can use this as a checklist. But ask yourself the hard question, do I have each of these really in place in my company? The first one is about indicators that measure the health of your business development program. Do you have those in place? And if so, do you actually use them? I had a college professor years ago said that you really don't know much about a topic if you can't measure it. And that's really true for business development. If you're not measuring, if you don't have quantitative measures of the different aspects of your business development program, put a check there and say that's something to look into. Do you have a process to keep leads from languishing on the bid list? When I was actually a line manager at SAIC and I ran a program of about 500 people, the thing that really irritated me the most was when we knew an RFP was coming out, we were well qualified to win it, but we hadn't collected all of the right information when the RFP came out. That opportunity had languished on our bid list, and even though we should have been in a winning position, we weren't. So the question here is about the process for making sure that doesn't happen in your company. If RFPs, requests for proposals, are continually coming out in areas that you can be competitive, but your capture teams haven't collected all of the information necessary to win, put a check there because you want to look into that. Do you have a way to establish meaningful bid lists? And those are bid lists in which opportunities are actually moving through the pipeline and are meeting certain criteria as they go through, so that you don't have a set of glacial debris in there, but opportunities that really are chosen for the right reasons because they're strategically aligned with the goals of the company and they're moving smartly through your opportunity assessment program. There's a real question in companies about how much to spend on bids, and that's number 4. Do you have a way to determine how many bids are needed to meet your financial goals? Spending too much money or going after too many opportunities, you're not likely to get enough resources, staff time in to be successful. On the other hand, too few bids, you're going to have a higher likelihood of winning, but you may not have enough activity to meet your financial goals. What's the balance there? If you have a way to determine that balance, that's great. If you don't, put a check there. It's something to look into. And let me quickly run through a few more and then give you an example. I'm going to drop down to number 7, how to ensure no bid decisions are made before they erode resources. It's not enough to have a process, a pipeline process, but you need to have a way to test whether your bids are, whether your opportunities are well enough qualified early on in the process so that you can make an excellent no-bid decision. In many ways, a good no-bid decision made early is just about as good as a good bid decision made later. And the reason for that is if you let an opportunity languish and you make that no-bid decision late, you've wasted time and money when you could have invested those dollars in a better opportunity. So do you have a way to make no-bid decisions very early in the process? And I found that many firms don't. They let those opportunities kind of languish and move slowly through a capture process kind of casually, and that no bid decision is made very late and you've wasted a lot of resources. Sabotaging the bid by not having a way to determine which firm should be on it and which firm should not be on it is also a critical measure in this structure. Do you have a way to determine when you should be closing on the team? If you start to put firms on too early and you haven't assessed that opportunity critically enough, you may get the wrong firms on. And if you do that too late in the process, you may miss the opportunity to get the right and winning firms on your bid. So I'm not asking whether you do it or not, and you may in some cases and not in others, but do you have a way to make sure it's done consistently on all of your opportunities? Let's quickly move through the next slide, which has the last few items on it. Finding out whether the proposal team is ready to go before it's too late or very costly to recover. And now we've moved from positioning to win the opportunity into being ready to write that proposal. And very often the proposal team is not well enough informed, the proposal manager is not well enough educated about that opportunity to really be able to lead an effective proposal. And many opportunities lose in the proposal stage, even though they're very, very well qualified in the positioning stage. Do you have a way to determine whether that proposal team is really ready to go and you're going to turn out a compelling proposal, or do you let it go until the end, until the red team or until the review period to see whether that proposal is really on track or not? Better to know it's not on track before the effort starts than to wait until time has passed and it's too late to really recover. And then finally, do you have a way to improve your competitive position after the proposal is submitted? Sometimes you can embed a little Trojan horse in that proposal, which gives you the opportunity to take some action after submission that gets the attention of the contract officer. But thinking about that very often can be the difference between a winning proposal and a losing proposal. And if part of your proposal submission is looking at those Trojan horses and seeing when you can embed those in the contracts, can very often end up in a few extra wins each year. I haven't gone over each one of these points because I want to talk a little bit about the measures. But use this as a checklist, and if you're checking off some of these that are not working for you, then you know where your homework is. I want to talk about that first essential element, that first principle, which is key performance measures. And I use 4 of them, and these are pretty effective. The first one I call firm contract backlog, which is the sum of the known sources of revenue. And that's a baseline measure, really, of the urgency of your business development program. A very firm contract backlog means that you can see where the revenue is coming along a fairly long horizon, and you have a very firm grip on your revenues over the next few years. Qualified proposal backlog is the sum of the sum of the values, the estimated values or the expected values from the proposals that have been submitted, but only if they've gone through a qualification process and the opportunities are very well positioned, rather than they've languished on the bid list and they're just thrown in. So there's a big difference between a qualified proposal backlog and just a backlog of submissions in which you really don't know how well positioned you are. Qualified leads backlog is the state of the proposal of the opportunities on your bid list and how well qualified they are. And I use a 4-stage process in order to assess that. But the point is that you need a systematic process to be able to measure the amount of revenue that's likely to come from your qualified leads backlog based on the maturity of the pursuits of those opportunities. And finally, a good measure of the efficiency of your overall program is sales efficiency, or the return on investment. And I don't go through all of these calculations here, but I just want to show you 1 or 2 so you get a sense of the importance of being able to measure these elements of your overall business development program. So on the next slide, I think I just track firm contract backlog, and here I'm showing the revenue projections from dependable sources, and that's what firm contract backlog means, for two companies. One I call the frantic company, and that's the red line. You can see how fast that drops off. And then the relaxed company, which is that bluish line, because it has a longer platform. It has a firm contract backlog than the frantic company. And you might think that the frantic company is in much worse shape than the relaxed company, and just based on this measure, it is. Because it doesn't have very much in its icebox or its freezer to run its company over the next several years. But there are other measures that are really important too, and so let me just move forward and take a little closer look at these two companies again on the next slide. So we looked at firm contract backlog on the previous slide, and I want to just show you those two firms again. And let's assume they both start out in this case year 2008 with the same revenue base, say it's $10 million or something along those lines. And that's what I plotted for the two firms. And then adding in the contract backlog, these two measures, you can see one firm, the one on the left we called the relaxed firm, and the one on the right the frantic firm, because the contract backlog was not very solid. It dropped off very fast. That waterfall chart was a very steep waterfall. Now let's look at the proposal backlog for these two firms, and this could be the situation. So in this case, you can see that the frantic firm actually has a stronger proposal backlog than the relaxed firm. It could be there are a lot of recompetes, and that were not captured in the firm contract backlog that are showing up in the proposal backlog, and they're very well qualified, and the likelihood of win is really very high. Now let's take a look at qualified leads backlog. Again, the seemingly frantic firm has a very vibrant pipeline of opportunities where that relaxed firm isn't finding much to bid on. It could be that the marketplace has dried up for its services. It could be it doesn't have a very good system to identify opportunities. Whatever the issue is, it's still not finding opportunities to bid. So even though initially it looked like the firm with the strong contract backlog was in the better situation and had the better program, it turns out that frantic firm had a lot going for it in the other measures, proposal backlog and qualified leads backlog. So it's important to be able to measure those elements, bring the principles in so that you can determine what these measures are, and really drive your business development program to maximize each one of these measures. The best firm would be the one that had the firm contract backlog of the firm on the left, but the proposal backlog and the qualified leads backlog of the firm on the right. So finding ways to get your firm to be like that is the difference between average growth and growth that really is extraordinary and consistent even when the budgets are dropping. So the material that we're going to cover that we do cover in the training goes into a great deal of detail of how to apply those measures and then how to address the other 10 principles that were on that checklist that you should really take back to your company and do a hard-nosed assessment of where you stand on each one of them.
Thanks, Ed. I want to let you know that upcoming in December and January, we have 4 important events that you should make sure your senior management attends. December 12th and 19th, we're going to be going into detail the hunt phase of this. This is a must-attend for anyone in sales, marketing, research, or lead generation. We'll be giving a thorough overview of how to research, find opportunities, create an unforgettable first impression, and literally knock on the door of your government customer. Then, coming up in January, Ed's going to be going over the tactics of how you really win a proposal, how you prepare for it, what are the metrics you need, and the key elements from transitioning from the capture to actually writing a clear, concise, and compelling proposal. You can register at the links on your screen, and we look forward to you joining us for the Hunt, Capture, and Win Professional Development Series. Thanks for listening to this orientation session. Have a wonderful day.